Hello and welcome to the second UK Creative Festival. I want to say a big thank you to our headline sponsors of Dentsu Creative and Soho Friends. I also wanted to let you know that if anybody wants to make a small donation to the Creative Foundation that funds the Careers Fair, there's a donation station in the foyer where each time you tap your card, it takes £5, so you can stand there tapping away. I would like you to put your hands together and welcome Scott Morrison and Rankin. Scott's in the business of impact, unblock, unlock, and unleash. He's a global keynote speaker of passion and energy. And then we have Rankin, who almost needs no introduction at all, one of the most famous photographers and directors in the UK, who has photographed the likes of Kate Moss, Madonna, David Bowie, the Queen, and even my wife. Please welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jezza.
Thank you, Jeremy. Oh, to be first.
Lovely morning.
Morning.
How are you all today? Who did yoga on the beach?
None of you.
Creative Festival.
No one did yoga on the beach. Thanks for coming. Getting up early.
Yeah, it's a great building to be in. Very creative, very historic. We're very happy to be here. And we had a long chat, didn't we, about what we were going to call this. You'll see it's called Be Fucking Nosey, aside from the fact we like to swear a bit. But it is called Be Fucking Nosey for a reason. So I'm going to be asking Rankin a few questions and talking about what that means. But because it's called that, we also want you to be fucking nosy as well. Right? So don't sit there thinking, I've got a question. Just put your hand up, ask a question. I'm going to ask you to tell some stories.
I dare one of you to ask a question now.
You can if you like.
There's
we go.
A question.
First question.
It better be nosy.
It was just to say, how are you today? And say thank you to be here. That's all.
We're good. Thank you for having us.
We've opened up. Yeah, go.
Did you do yoga?
Good question. We were on a train at 7 o'clock this morning, so we did our own mind yoga, I'd like to call it.
We kind of did, physically, do stuff. We walked to the train.
Yeah, had a coffee.
It was good.
Well, listen, let's start. Actually, we're going to ask you a question because we tried to shape this so that you hear some insights and some different thinking about careers and stuff in creativity. And then we get to hear some of your voices as well. But the first thing I want to ask is, how many people in the room want to be or are in a creative career, want to be in a creative career when they grow up, as it were, never grow up, in the future? How many people in the room want to be in a creative career?
Or already creative?
Hands up. Excellent, near enough everyone, good. So how many, keep your hands up if you know exactly what it is that you want to be in. Ooh. Oh, okay.
How many of you want to be photographers?
Okay, so it's shrinking and shrinking.
That's interesting.
And how many of you, so of the people who don't know what they want to do, how many of you want to know more about what's out there available to be creative in creative careers? Okay, so pretty much everyone else. Wicked.
You want to be here?
Well, we've tried to gear that to this session today, because the whole purpose about being fucking nosy is about Rankin's philosophy on creativity and how to be creative. And it is about literally being nosy. So we want to share some of that with you today, talk about what that means, how you fundamentally can do more of it, and then we'd love you to be fucking nosy in return and ask us any questions that you want to ask as we go through. So I want to start, Rankin, with, like, when you started out, so imagine that you were in that crowd and you would want to put your hand up, said, I'm not quite sure, but when you started out, what did you start being really nosy about to start getting into what it is that you did?
Can I start by saying that when I was a little boy, I was born in Glasgow, and my parents say now that my favourite word was why. So I started out with parents that were trying to answer that question. Why is the moon shining at night and not during the day, etc., etc. And every time I asked that question, my parents would encourage me to keep asking the question, as opposed to saying, shut up, Bernard, or whatever, we're not interested in you. They would always try and answer it. And I think that plus being born in Glasgow, where people are not put on pedestals and are not put down, they're kind of talked to on an even level, meant that when I was getting into my kind of teenage years, I didn't feel, even though I wouldn't have asked a question if I was one of you at your ages, I was really, really inquisitive about everything because my parents had encouraged it. So when I eventually became a creative, which was when I was studying accountancy, I became I became a creative because I was dumped into Hall's residence to do accountancy with loads of art students, and they started to ask me why. Why are you studying accountancy? Why are you the person you are, the way you are, doing something that's so boring? And that made me go back home to my parents and really, really question why I was going in this direction in my life. And that made me pick up a camera, and that camera, I couldn't draw, I couldn't write. You're a much better writer than me. I couldn't do anything that was necessarily creative growing up. But what I did have was an opinion, and I was very inquisitive. And the minute I picked up that camera for the first time and I looked through it, I thought, it was like a light bulb moment. I thought, shit, I can show people how I see the world. And that, being able to see the world through a lens, made me even more inquisitive.
So the interesting point is that it's almost like a skill. So picking up a skill of becoming a great photographer, picking up a skill of any of the creative things that you might want to be in the audience, there's a skill that underlies all that, which is this inquisitive, this nosiness. So how do you start to acquire that skill, and what do people in the audience need to start thinking about to be more nosy?
I think it's a combination of things. It's like my dad, I'm going to talk about parents a lot because I kind of got a lot out of being brought up by two amazing people. But my mum and my dad always told me to do something that I loved, and I would never work a day in my life. So I was always looking for something that I was searching for something that would excite me, and of course accountancy wasn't it. But you know, that idea of not you know, putting people on pedestals was something that when I first started to take photographs, I wanted to be a documentary. I wanted to change the world and be a social, you know, realist documentary photographer, but I was shit at it. And what I was good at was being really inquisitive about human beings. So my girlfriend at the time, when I started to take pictures, one of her friends said to me, the weird thing about you, and she wasn't being nice, is that when you're talking to someone, you make them feel like they're center of the universe. And I went, no one had ever said that to me before, and I went, really? And what I realized was that being inquisitive, just being really interested in people, was what I was particularly successful at. And then when I realized that, I was like, I should be a portrait photographer. So when I started to take portraits, what was happening was that my relationship with people was beyond just what the camera was showing or seeing. And the more I talked to them, the more they were giving me, and the more the camera could then see, the lens could see, and the better the portraits became. So the more inquisitive I became, the better the pictures. And I think once I'd realized that, I kind of went crazy. So like the first day, I remember going into college for the first day. So I dumped accountancy, which was a really good thing. I went and worked in a hospital as a porter to earn some money. My dad wouldn't talk to me, which was a bit weird, because we were very close. And I basically taught myself. I went into the library and I taught myself everything about photography. I started with basic photography by Langford, then did advanced photography by Langford, and then did Susan Sontag, and then went into the library and did A to Z of photography and learned about every single photographer I could learn about. I was like a kind of cookie monster. Like, just give me more, give me more, give me more, give me more. And so when I went into college, got into college eventually, I went to the London College of Printing. It was a big, big deal. And the first day I went in, there was this girl giving out magazines, and I went up to her and I went, "What's that?" And she said, "Oh, it's a student magazine." And I was like, who does it? Who made it? And she said, "Oh, we made it." Now, up to that point in my life, my parents and me would call you guys, or the people that make things, they. And I went, "Oh, they. You're they. You're the they people." And she was like, "Yeah, you can do it as well." And I think if I hadn't done that, you know, one thing, would pick up the magazine, I wouldn't have been the photographer I am today.
I can actually vouch, by the way, for when we were backstage earlier, Frankie's he's here, we were just talking, having a coffee, and one of the first things Rankin said was, "Hang on a minute, I can recognise, you've got an accent." And from that little part of just being nosy, we suddenly got quite a bit out of Frankie about, she's actually French-Canadian, and then we had a whole massive conversation about it. So it's even in those small moments where being nosy can just create a bond between you and the other person. But, that said, it can be incredibly uncomfortable, I imagine. And, you know, it can be incredibly uncomfortable to ask people what might feel intrusive. Be a bit, because when we talk about being nosy, we often think about, you know, the old curtain twitchers and people being nosy for the wrong reasons.
The curtain twitchers.
What we're talking about is putting yourself into a bit of discomfort to get some really massive value out the back of it. But when have you felt really uncomfortable being nosy, but had an interesting result out of doing so?
Probably when I photographed the Queen, like,
Just photographing the Queen.
It was pretty. I mean, I'm from Scotland, so we don't really have. You know, my parents didn't bring me up to have a kind of real respect for the royal family, but which is pretty normal in Scotland. We've got healthy disrespect for the royal family. But I kind of got this shoot out of the blue. I was with an agency that got 10 photographers to shoot, and I was surprised that they even wanted me in the same room as her. But I did that thing where I went and researched again, and just getting to know the Queen and what had happened to her uncle and all these things, humanizing her, made me very, you know, interested in her. I was inquisitive about the person, not about the Queen, but about the woman. And then when I went to meet her, I knew that I'd read that she had a great sense of humor. So I was like, you know, got to try and make her laugh, haven't you? Got to like make her enjoy the process of being photographed. So the weirdest thing was, I'm going to make it very short, I ended up in the throne room at Buckingham Palace. How they let me in is beyond me. And she walked up this corridor, really long corridor with this really tall footman. And as she was walking, she was laughing. And I was like, shit, she has got a good sense of humor. And he was about 6'2" or something, so she was really laughing up to him. And then she walked in, and she started chatting to me and making jokes and stuff. And she said, "So what's your idea?" And I said, "Well, because it's the throne room, I was hoping," this was the nosy bit, "you know, I was hoping I could get you to hold a sword." And to just ask that question took a lot of guts, let me tell you. And what my favorite thing was, her answer was like, because you're not really allowed to say no, the Queen. I don't know if she's a public servant, essentially. So she never says no to anything outright. She said, "I don't like my hands." And I was like, that's the best sidestep of any request I've ever had. Anyway, so I started photographing her. And no, I'm thinking I'm getting everything. I'm thinking, these photographs are amazing. Just give me everything. Just give me everything. And then the sync lead fell out on my camera. And she laughed at it. And I was like, okay, and this is where it got uncomfortable. I was like, "Ma'am, can you smile, please? Ma'am, can you smile, please? Ma'am, can And I just kept saying it, like almost like Austin Powers. Ma'am, can you please smile, ma'am? And eventually she smiled, and I got an amazing picture. So, but that was probably my most uncomfortable, very intimidated situation. But if I hadn't photographed, 1,000 bands in 1,000 hotel rooms, because bands make you feel really uncomfortable, it's like a thing they do. And you just have to brazen it out and just ask lots of stupid questions.
I want to ask the audience at this stage, right? Who feels uncomfortable being nosy? Yeah, I'll put my hand up for you. Yeah. Who feels really comfortable being nosy and inquisitive? Right, so let's ask someone. Keep your hands up who's nosy, right, and inquisitive. I want to, apart from Jezza, I want to know, tell us a story, whoever's got their hand up, about when you've been nosy, because I want other people to hear who are uncomfortable being it, where you've been nosy and something great has happened as a result. So who'd like to share that? There's two at the front here. Rankin, you two. Yeah, that.
Not on top of me. Not on top of me.
You don't want to speak? Yeah, you speak.
I'm nosy all day long. You have to be at work.
What do you do?
I work for TikTok as a creative.
So what, when you've been nosy, what's the most incredible moment you've had as a result of being really nosy?
Get all the information that you need in order to do your job.
And have you got any creative output as a result of doing that?
It's all day long, every day. You're right. You have to be nosy and inquisitive to get what you want, because you're not going to get the answers anyway and be able to do your job.
Exactly. So, there's a question over there. Yes, please.
It's actually a photography story. I was following this couple in a walk the weekend, and they had two little Chihuahua dogs in bags, and they wouldn't let the dogs walk. And they had little hats with ducks on. And me and my friend were going, what they do? And we'd seen them fussing with these dogs, and the dogs weren't allowed to walk. And we were like, oh, it's terrible. They should let the dogs walk. Why are they, turn them into dollies? But as we were walking up the hill, I really want to find out what is going on with the dogs. This little dog was going, whoa, whoa, seemed really sad. So I thought, what's a way in to get to talk to them and find out? And they were talking Chinese, very sort of, I thought, I don't know if they even speak English. I don't know what's going to happen. So then they were trying to take a selfie with the dogs and against this backdrop. So I said, oh, can I help you? I'll take the picture. And they were really grateful. And then as I was taking these pictures, I said, are the dogs okay? I tried to pat the dog and it went like that. And I thought, oh, mental dogs. I said, the dog's okay. Why don't they walk? They said, they're very, very elderly. They're just about to die. They're 13 years old. Chihuahuas live to 50. And they said they can only do a little bit of exercise a day. And then me and my friends started talking. They were from Hong Kong. They were refugees, basically, because of the situation. They were really sad. They just moved over here from Manchester, living in Manchester, bought their dogs. And he was a photographer, a photojournalist, working at one of the papers.
Great.
And he was frightened for his life. And they told us all this stuff. And we felt really sorry. Me and my friend used to live in Hong Kong, so we had all this synergy, and it was such an amazing thing, because we'd been going really judgy. And then, just by being nosy, what's with the dogs, we got their whole life story.
Unbelievable.
Amazing.
And the great thing about that story as well, which you'll probably be able to build on, Rankin, is sometimes before we shoot somebody or partner with somebody or do some creative with a brand, whatever it might be, we might have some misconceptions, immediate misconceptions. Well, their dogs are lazy. Most people are pampering them. What ridiculous. Then when you get to understand more about them by being nosy, everything comes to light. And actually the richness in that, they're actually refugees. He's a photographer. The dogs are elderly. They're probably on their last trip. You suddenly have an incredible amount of empathy and something great to work with that other people don't have, because they haven't taken the time to do that bit of nosiness that you've done. And have you ever, Rankin, like or thought something of somebody, or something you're going to shoot, and then it's changed as a result?
Yeah, I think the best example. There's a couple of examples for me, but I was brought up, again, go back to my parents, to really believe in my own empirical view of the world. So I guess what that means is, like, yeah, you can be mediated to by newspapers or the TV or whatever it is, even by anecdotal sort of stuff from friends. But the reason that I really believe in being nosy is because it's your perspective on it. So the why question comes up a lot for me, which is good for creativity. But the best one that I've ever experienced is when I was asked to photograph Gordon Brown for The Guardian. And I was like, God, he's, you know, if you read anything about him, he's really boring and he's really dull and he's awful. But because of what I do, I've never really taken that stuff seriously. I've always wanted to meet the person. That's why I'm a photographer. And when I rocked up to meet him, I went in and out jumped this bloke who was like full of beans, really friendly, chatty as anything, super charming, and super relaxed with me. I took some brilliant, what I thought was brilliant photographs of him, and really just started talking to him. And every single question I asked him, he answered, and every single question that he asked me, I answered. And I'd just done a project for Oxfam, where I'd gone to the Congo, which is another nosy thing I can talk about. And he was like, let me see the pictures. Showed him pictures. And he said, I want to present your pictures in Downing Street at a kind of event that will invite people from, you know, that have money that can really help in the Congo. And I was like, right, okay, so we're going to invite the press. And he was like, no press. We're not getting any press from this. And Gordon Brown did an event in Downing Street for me. Not many people know this. And he invited all these financiers to this event. And he stood up and talked about me and my photographs for 15 minutes without a speech. There was nothing written down. He just talked about it. And it literally was me going, instead of going, oh, fucking Gordon Brown, I'm not shooting him, he's dull. I met this bloke who I think is possibly one of the most amazing politicians that the country's ever had. Now, most of you out there probably don't think that, but I'm telling you, the guy's straight up a good guy. And the reason I got to go to the Congo was because they used to get me to do photographs for Oxfam. I always wanted to do charity work because I felt it was important to balance out, you know, being paid really well for doing what you love. And I'd always do the celebrity things. And eventually one day I went, you can't stop giving me all these celebrity fucking pictures. It's really boring. Can you not just send me to a war zone and I'll take pictures there? And they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, come on, it's like I'm fascinated to go and see stuff for real. And they said, well, where do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know. What's the place that no one's talking about? And they were like, well, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's just awful there. And I said, that's where I want to go. So I got to go to the Congo because I was nosy.
Look at that. So opportunities come literally from being nosy. And things, I love the fact, does anyone remember Gordon Brown, by the way? Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, he was portrayed as probably the most dour prime minister that we've ever had. But, I mean, that story, and I met him as well, and he is actually really interesting. So being nosy helped shift perceptions. I just saw a hand raised at the back, so I'd like to go there.
Hello, yo. I actually think it's probably quite easy to ask questions, but it's quite hard to get time. What I'd like to know is that, where do you think the line is drawn between being nosy and being rude?
It's a fine line. I mean, I'm kind of known for being quite rude. Unfortunately, it's you know, that's something that people have said about me. And I think actually, like, the weirdest thing is actually when you're more arrogant with it, it's a problem. You've got to have humility with it. And I think that comes with age and learning. Like, I don't know if any of you do therapy, but for somebody that has to empathize in their lives, one of the things I never understood was why people didn't have the same view as me, the moral compass, etc. And when my therapist said, well, everybody is different, you do realize that, I was like, really? Like, so, you know, questioning yourself helps you question other people. And one of the things I've always done, and I think it's interesting as a creative, is put yourself in front of the camera. So, you know, if you're making creative work, put yourself in the creative work. Try to put yourself in the circumstance of the subject, because if you're nosy about what it's like to do that, then actually it makes it easier for you when you're directing somebody or you're working with someone. So if you want to, you know, work with a photographer, take photographs. I always think it's really important to be inquisitive about other people's talents, because, you know, most people will say work with people that are better than you, which I really agree with, but at the same time, if you don't do their jobs a little bit and experience it, you don't really understand what they're going through. Does that answer that?
I'll just add to that as well. I think it's the kind of questions that you ask.
Yeah.
So I often have a scale of questions when I work with brands and I work with sort of people on boards. And you can't just obviously just wade in and go, well, what's really going on here? It's because they don't want to know. Ego gets in the way. So quite often I'll ask a CEO, what's keeping you awake at night? And then suddenly they'll, because nobody ever asked them that question. And so if you can find the right sort of questions to go in with, you'll be amazed, because people don't actually get often asked those kind of questions. So they suddenly pour out all the heart because they've never been asked it. But no one ever asked me that. Oh, let me tell you. And then suddenly you can pick out of that lots of interesting angles to work with them, different things they're interested in, stuff that's of value from them to you, and vice versa. So think about the questions that you're asking, and put that into practice as well.
And also, as a creative, I think a lot of what creativity is about is solving problems. So one of the things we always say is, what's the problem? You know, how can we help you solve the problem that you've got? Because a lot of the time, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for, you know, shiny, kind of bright, glossy crap. They're looking for something that'll actually get to the bottom of their problem and solve it for them.
So there's another thing that's...
He wants to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, please. Let's get the microphone on you.
Who's the most difficult client you've had, and how do you deal with it?
All of them.
You don't have to name names, but just like the situation.
You can't name names. It's like I've got this real... I mean, if you ask me, you know, outside of a camera watching me, and I'd probably tell you a little bit anecdotally, because I think it's all right to do that. But I have this real thing where, and I didn't always have it, actually. It's something I've learned. I've developed it through being a dick when I was a bit younger. I've developed this thing where, you know, I'm almost like a priest or a gynecologist. So when you come to me, you know, it's a safe space, you know, and I don't walk away from that and tell bad stories, because I think that although there are some very funny bad stories that I can tell you, especially about certain clients and celebrities, it's actually not cool to do it. So I tend to keep my mouth shut about that stuff, because although it's nosy to ask me, which is good, I just feel like there's too many people going around telling people, you know, how shit people are. And my theory on it is this, and it's a really important theory. You or anybody in this room, including us too, you've got no idea if someone's split up with their partner, their dog's about to die, you know, their family's breaking apart, you know, whatever, their car doesn't work. You just don't know. So when they walk into that room, you know, it's not really about what my judgment on them is. If I'm taking their portrait, I've got to let that go and try and see them beyond, you know, whatever's going on with them. And there are mad things that happen. You know, we could both tell you lots of stories. Sorry, it's a bit of a long answer to an easy question.
Oh, we can't tell you any more than that.
I wish I could. I wish I could.
Yes, please. Another question.
I've found as a journalist, it's often quite handy if people are being a bit guarded to be very open myself. Well, I'm like that anyway.
Yeah, but I've done that. I've done that, and then I've been like hung up and, you know, hung, drawn, and quartered. You know, I've been really open with a journalist, and they've absolutely slaughtered me for off-the-record stuff. So, yeah.
No, I was going to say, if you've got a subject that you're trying to photograph and they're a bit closed off and you're not finding out about something.
Yeah.
Are you an open person yourself?
Well,
To
I
sort of
do,
encourage
but
them?
I do open up about myself a lot, and
Yeah.
I think that I try and reflect the personality, so I try and be a mirror to the personality of the person I'm photographing or the brand I'm trying to work with. I try and be the guardian at the same time of the person or the brand. But the thing is that's really interesting about it is, as a journalist, there's this tendency for people to think that it's their story, whereas a photographer, they're blending me their face and their time, and I have a real belief that that should be a collaborative experience. So what I do, and it's very unusual as a photographer, I let them in on the process of editing and choosing the work, and as a journalist, that's almost impossible to do. So, it's a different if you're doing something like this or a podcast, but if you're doing a kind of, a piece about a person, like a Lynn Barber, for example, who interviewed me and said I was too boring to actually write something about, which I thought was brilliant. You have to have that like integrity about what you're saying. So yes, but at the same time, I'd rather they were a bit pokier than seduced me, if I'm honest, because I've been seduced and then fucked over royally, and it does not, it's not nice, and it doesn't feel very nice, especially when they misquote you. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just talking more about if you're like trying to get some information out of somebody in a nice way.
Yeah.
It can help if you share your information, so it's more of
it does work.
It's like collaborative, yeah.
Yeah, it does work, and also, like, if you're a priest, and you don't tell anyone the story, then they trust you, so they give me more. So my whole theory on that is, if I hand over some of the power, what happens is they feel more comfortable to take risks. So, because I'm trying to get someone to perform, you're getting someone to open up. It's a slightly different relationship, but yeah, 100%.
Great. I'm just going to hold that question. We'll come back to you definitely. But what I wanted to talk about was, when we were coming down on the train, we were talking about this thing that you described as the generational gap, like a potential generational gap, where there's something happening between the generations that, again, it's more of a hypothesis, I guess. We're sort of witnessing it or seeing it. It's probably good to test it in here. Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about that and see what the audience think?
Yeah, I think that the thing that, I'm nosy, right? So one of my big things, I am really genuinely nosy. So one of my big things is I read a lot. I think that creativity isn't about just looking on Instagram or finding, trying to like see other photographers' work. I'm like looking everywhere. I'm looking at every part of culture to see what's going on, to see what the zeitgeist is, to see what the taboos are, to like really understand like why do we not talk about death? Why do we not talk about endometriosis? There are all these things we don't talk about, which are fucking weird. And one of the things that I've been really noticing, anecdotally, like people that I work with, but also people are writing about, is that this is the biggest generational gap since the 50s, which is, when you think about it, pretty scary. And the reason that I think there's a generational gap is not because of the difference in attitudes and ages. I think actually what's happened is there's been a revolution, a digital revolution, and the whole paradigm of what we do and how we make things and how we discourse with each other and how we communicate has turned upside down. And the generational gap isn't actually between the generations, it's between two types of people. The people that are inquisitive and interested and the people that are tapping out. And that's my theory that I'm going to sort of put out there. And I'm sure you're going to criticize it, but it's just, I think that the world is splitting, and populism's got a lot to do with it, is splitting into two different types of people. People are only interested in hearing what their theories are and listening to other people that have got the same theories, and the other people, which is definitely, I think, me and Scott, who are interested in everyone's opinions and want to find common ground within them. Discuss.
Yeah, let's have a thought on that. Yes.
100%.
So the question, let's just repeat the question.
Yeah.
The question there was, is it down to social media and the echo chamber that it creates that's helping drive this generational gap?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that it's a big part of it, but it's broader than that. You know, I would actually say it's more down to the technological revolution. I think that social media is a big part of it, but Google is a massive part of it. We all love Google. We all think it's brilliant, but kids in my team, my assistants, I'm like, have you watched Rear Window? And they're like, what's Rear Window? And I'm like, if I was a photographic student at your age and I hadn't watched Rear Window, I would be ostracized. I would be ostracized. I would be seen as to be stupid. And there's no engagement with it. And I think that that's not, you know, you could blame Marvel and all the shit films that they put out. But at the same time, it's like, culturally, you know, that kind of inquisitiveness seems to be being sort of deafened. And I don't think it's just social media. I think it's other things as well. I think it's the Emily Maitlis, you know, speech she gave where she talks about these two positions, one which is completely untenable, you know, and one which has got 99 people. You know, she talks about the climate change. She can get 99 scientists to talk about it, and she can't find one that support it and one that won't. But you have to have those two positions. That's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. So, you know, these types of, this is the culture wars they're calling it, but it's not the culture wars, I don't think. It's actually a way of kind of separating proper debate and discussion.
Couple with that though as well.
I didn't want to get political, but you know, we've got a prime minister. I'm just gonna put it out there, right? Literally, right? The one great thing about Liz Truss is if she can be prime minister, anyone can do anything. Anyone can do anything. Your children, you should be going, look at that, because like fucking hell, anyone can do that now, because she's a joke, you know. So, but we don't discuss or debate that. Joe Lycett takes the piss out of it, and the Daily Mail say you can't be funny. I mean, the Daily Mail telling people they can't be funny is kind of weird, right?
Fun police.
Anyway,
there's a reality in creativity as well, right? So what we're building here is like if you want to be great at it, there's being nosy and inquisitive.
Yeah.
There's getting out there and doing it. And there's also the thing of hard work. So I saw this like meme the other day where it was a huge, there were two booths. One booth was life hacks on the right, and one booth was hard work on the left. And there were 99 and 100 people, 99 people in the life hacks queue and one person in the hard work queue. And the point was that in life, we all think, and I was guilty of it sometimes as anyone else, we all think that we'll just hack our way to being great at something, great at being a speechwriter, great at public speaking, great at photography, because that's the world we kind of live in. We all believe that can happen. But the reality is, like you said, when you started in photography, aside from watching Rear Window, you went through every single photographer. You've got encyclopedic knowledge of photography to the point where you can see a photograph and say who it's from. But that's hard work.
Yeah, and also there's two things about that. Like, one, the reason that being nosy works for creativity is because creativity, what we make is being consumed by human beings. So if it works for a human being, it works. So that's why if you're kind of like theorizing something, and I've got a creative services agency now. So one of the things that I always find with the creative services creatives is they overcomplicate things. They've got ideas, but it goes off on a tangent, and suddenly we're doing like a fucking art piece for like, you know, for a Saatchi gallery, and I'm like, it's, you know, we're selling a soap powder. Like, guys, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's not clashing for the right reasons. So that's one thing that's, you know, being nosy works for creativity because we're human beings, and therefore it works for human beings. And then the other thing is that this X factor, Simon Cowell's got a lot to answer for, right? Because this idea of like, you go on a TV show and suddenly you become a photographer. It doesn't work like that, you know. And the worst thing about it is, well, I went to school, college, to learn for 5 years, right? It took 5 years to learn it. A camera phone has got the technology within it that a 5-year-old can do it in 5 seconds. So it's got a dark room in it that's probably the best dark room that I've ever used in my life. It's got a coloring system that could be an Oscar winner could use. It's basically handing everybody this incredible tool that's really powerful, that's really amazing, and it's going, just press the button, right? But the thing is that great photographs are taken by lots and lots of people. Probably everybody in this room has taken a great picture, right? But for proper photographers, real photographers make pictures. They don't just take them. And the difference between a photographer like me and another amateur photographer, or any of you guys maybe, is that I have to take a great picture, and then a great picture, and then a great picture, and a great picture, and a great picture, and a great picture, and a great picture. And I can never not take a great picture, because if I don't, then I don't get another job. So, and that took me, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, I did those in the first 2 years, you know, so I just really believe that, you know, when photographers go to me, how can I become a great photographer? I'm like, take lots of pictures. That'll train you to be a great photographer.
We've got time for a couple of questions, so yes, please.
You've pretty much just answered my question, actually, but how much of your work, Rankin, is actually being a business person rather than a photographer?
Great question. 90%, I would say. I would say 90% is business, whether it's hustle, whether it's, you know, trying to like balance the books, whether it's doing exhibitions. You know, I'm always thinking about how I can get. A lot of people go, why are you so famous? Oh, you want to be famous, don't you? And I'm like, no, I want my photos to be famous. I want my work to be famous. And if I don't go out there and promote it, then the work doesn't get seen. So that's why you know me and know my name, because I'm promoting the photos all the time. And I think that, you know, it's very easy to think, a lot of people think you just get an agent and they get you work. No, they don't. What the agent does is negotiates your fees. They don't get you work. You get you work. You know, another really good example is one of a brilliantly talented creative that worked for me, who I was helping repping them for a while. And they go, why am I not getting more work? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that? I'm good enough. And I'm like, because you never ever do anything for free. You never do anything that's your own. You never create your own work. You're always just being commissioned and being paid to do it. And that, unfortunately, leads to nowhere. Whereas if you're always like, there's a great photographer called Chris Floyd who did this brilliant, like a presentation where he took one photo and he said, I got commissioned to do this photo. It was a freebie. It was a favor. That photograph took me to that photograph, which I got paid a little bit for, and it got me a bit of press. That photograph took me to that photograph, to that photograph, to that photograph, to that photograph, and the last photograph was a really massively well-paid commission. That's how it works. It doesn't work any other way. It's like if you think you're going to take a few pictures, get a portfolio together on your camera phone, and go to an agent, and the agent's going to rep you, and they're going to call up Edward Enfield, and suddenly you're going to be Mario Testino or Sorrenti. It doesn't work like that. So you have to realize that the power of, and the nosiness of, can I do this? Can I do that? What about this? What about that? Every job I do, I'm saying to the person, tell people you enjoyed working with me and suggest me to other people, because that's a kind of reverse nosy, you know?
Just want to come back to your original question about being nosy, and this kind of might even wrap this up. Going back 40-something years, because I'm the oldest person in here. All right, gotcha. I lived in a little village outside Ramsgate called Cliff's End, and there was a lad moved into town who'd moved here with the forces. His dad was in the forces. I knew him reasonably well, and he went off later on and he went to university, and he met this photographer called Rankin. It was Jeff Hack. And I was interested, I'd always been interested in photography, but because him and sort of just being that nosy what kids you knew of what they got up to in later years, I came across his photographer Rankin, and you have massively influenced my career as a photographer. A depressing amount of my week spent photographing babies and kids and families. But there's projects on top of it where I really do utilise that nosiness. And I think my portraits are emulating yours on a terrible level. But so it was that nosiness that really kicked me off down the route of becoming a photographer. So when you see Jeff Hack, do tell him Chris N says hello.
Yeah, because he's from round here, isn't he? He's from Ramsgate.
He lived down in Ramsgate for a few years.
He's from Ramsgate, yeah.
There you go. And when
Were you
we
at
found
school
out,
with him then?
When we found out he got together with Kate Moss, I mean, Jesus
I know,
Christ,
what the fuck is that?
Yeah, how did that
How
happen?
did he get Kate Moss? What, did you know him at school? I didn't go to school with him. You knew him from round here? Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, he's another one. The reason I met him, because he was nosy. Yeah, he came to he was the only person, I'll finish with this. I put an ad out when I was in student magazines saying, oh, you know, we're looking for journalists. He was the only person that turned up. And I said, you're the assistant editor. Because he was nosy. He was like, I just thought I'd come along and see what you were. And he started talking about crystals, which put me off him a bit, but anyway.
So literally, history, the days that confuse coming together is all built on nosiness, and a lovely way to end it with your story too. Thank you very much. And listen, thank you all for coming and being here, and for your nosiness. I think I take out of this today, constantly, it's at the bottom of your emails, in fact, Rankin, question everything. Like, question everything, keep being nosy and inquisitive. Use this time that you have in the next couple of days to ask awkward questions, to your point. Just ask the questions, but think about them from all the people on this stage, because the more you ask questions, the more you'll shape and change your perceptions, the more opportunities you might have to get to know more about exactly what you want to be and do in the creative industry. And fundamentally, it is about hard work, whichever way we cut it. But, like Rankin said at the start, I think his dad said, if you find the thing that you love doing the most, and it's a bit cliche, but it is true. I tell you from my heart, this doesn't feel like work.
This definitely doesn't feel like work.
This is what we're passionate about doing, which is why we do it. So we want you to have that passion, and we encourage you to be fucking nosy, and we'll hang around for a bit if you've got some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
And thanks to Jeremy and the team for being such wonderful hosts and doing great stuff. Enjoy the rest of your day.